This vlog is on My Life's a Cup More Than Half Full. So, this song is basically a song of optimism about how, even though things might be far from perfect, life is still very good. And the image for this song actually came from when I had, I believe, come from Malaysia to Taiwan to go visit for a long stay. I had gotten this cup at, I think it was Poya. They sell really cool teacups there sometimes you can get. But I got this cup to be able to go and get re reuse the cup at tea shops in Taiwan while I was staying there. And I took the cup with me when I left Taiwan to go to Thailand on holiday. And the image that was made into chibi art is me holding the cup up against the door of the place I was staying, and the Chinese door knocker, which basically says good luck or warm thoughts. So the song's message is basically that even though things might not be perfect in life, you might have your sock on the wrong foot, you might have a coffee stain on your shirt, you might have missed your train, it's still very good. And how to look at life through a positive lens. I think the reason that I tend to write songs that are optimistic is I tend to be more optimistic in my personality and opinions rather than pessimistic. Now, what's kind of odd about that is I am an oldest and I do tend to plan for the worst. So it's like when I'm planning something, when I'm setting something up, I'm making sure that pretty much every contingency I can think of is covered, but I still live my life positively. I still tend to think positively about things. And even though life might be very, very far from perfect, I don't let that get me down. I'm one of those people that even if all hell broke loose, I probably would sit there and not be depressed and disappointed, but still trying to be optimistic and do what I can in the middle of the milieu. So it kind of reminds me of back in 2023, in early 2023, I was in Taiwan, and some of my friends from the US were calling me going, what if, mainland invades and you're there in the middle of a blockade and all hell breaks loose because the fighter planes were going over, they were doing like the warship practices off the coast. And I was like, you know, I sat there for a while and I was thinking about what my friend said, and I was watching the people on the street as I was contemplating this, and I was like, the world is kind of on fire everywhere, and I think that you have to kind of decide where you're going to be in the midst of the fire and try not to fan the flames. Now, that doesn't mean that I believe in being reckless at all, but if you have to be somewhere and they happen to have jets flying over and war practice going on the coast, it's like it doesn't really pay to sit there and go, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And the other thing that I think is we kind of have a bit of a maybe warped opinion coming from the Western world that it could never happen back there. And I'm like, you know, I'm hoping definitely that nothing that cataclysmic comes to where I used to call home. But I also am smart enough to know things can go awry very quickly anywhere you are. So you just need to decide where you want to be. And I think it comes down to one of my favorite quotes when I was in like junior high and high school was, you have to decide the places you don't want to run away from. And it's not that you want to run away from things or run away from people, but you have to decide what places are worth your time, energy, talents, etc., to stay for, to continue for. And I think in many ways that goes back to the optimism because there have been times in my life where I grew up in a house that wasn't maybe particularly optimistic, at least half and half. So it was always something where sometimes people would come up and go, "Why are you so happy?" or "Why are you so optimistic when the world is, so crazy, so wrong?" And I'm like, the world is crazy. The world is wrong. But if we spend our time thinking entirely on how crazy and wrong the world is, we miss out on our lives, we miss out on the joys that can happen. And I'm not downplaying the bad things that happen in the world because there are a lot of bad things. I've been through a lot of difficulties myself. It's like, you know, it's not necessarily easy, but I do think this life has a lot of joys if we take the time to see it. And I think in many ways that's what this song is about. It's about how your life isn't perfect. You've got chips in your china, but it still holds the tea. Your feet might be soaked with rain, but you're still happy. And I think that, especially in this day and age where we've come off of a global pandemic, we are dealing with deflation or inflation, depending on what part of the world you're in. You've got the rising cost of living, the rising cost of just general housing. There's a lot of things that could try to take our mind away from the everyday joys we experience. And I think that that is not something that we should downplay, perhaps. I think, we do need to be mindful of life situations and the difficulties that happen. But we also need to take time to realize we only get this chance. I mean, I know there's some people that believe in reincarnation, and I'm not saying that's not real, but I'm like, for me, I'm like, well, I only know I've only got guarantee on this one time. So I'm like, for this one time around the sun, I think we need to be able to enjoy the joys that it can bring. And I think that's why I tend to see life as a cup more than half full. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be easy, but it does mean that you tend to look at life and go, there are troubles, there are difficulties, but it'll be okay. It'll be fine. And I think that also as we age, like things that used to bother me in high school that I thought were monumental, and I was never really a drama queen back then either. Come to think of it, I'm like, I've always been kind of who I am, but I'm like, things that proportionally would have bothered me far more when I was like younger, now I just let it and go, it's a roadblock, it's a difficulty, it's a bit of a stressor, but it will be fine. I think, the only things that really kind of stress me out nowadays is like all the paperwork for the visas and the trips and the whatnot. I'm like, that can be a little daunting at times, but then you have these moments where you're like, you'll deal with it, you'll face it, you'll get all the paperwork filled out, you'll fill out the paperwork you don't think you need. And then after you do that, you will decompress. And it's like, that that's how I handle it. So I wrote this song to kind of encapsulate how we can maintain optimism in the midst of stained shirts. I was recently going through my apartment because I'm doing like a spring cleaning here. I know it's like I can't just do one thing. I have to do multiple things at once. I'm like I never thought I had ADHD, but now I kind of wonder. But anyway, I'm like I was going through some of my clothes in my closet and sorting things. And I'm like, I had a couple of shirts that I'm going, I don't know if a tornado attacked them. And I really can't blame my previous students because I'm like, I would love to say this is their fault because in class we were messy or dealing with paints or, a science experiment gone wrong. But I'm like, I really don't think I can blame the children for this. So I just looked at the shirts. I was like, I'm going to throw them in the wash. It'll be grand, as they say in Leap Year. And if it's not grand, I'm going to throw them out. And I threw them in the wash. I'm like, it wasn't so grand, so I threw them out. But I'm going, life has stained shirts. Life has chaotic moments. And it kind of depends on how you handle that, how you process it. Are you going to be optimistic? Are you going to be pessimistic? How are you going to face the life? And actually, I don't think it's so much face the life as live through the life. Like you're wading through a cool stream and you've got to figure out how to navigate it. Now, this is one of the few songs that is in English entirely. I did base this song off of the Mando pop style. So this album has songs in Mando pop style, it has songs in Thai pop style. I've created some voices or personas through Suno that I use, and I really liked this style of persona, as it were, because I named it Calm Bounce because it is kind of bouncy, it's kind of peppy, but it's also a bit calmer. And so I had developed this style a little bit before I took the trip to KL for the second time, and that's one of the reasons I decided to use it. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting is as I was writing this song, I was in the middle of trying to deal with the visa paperwork because I was closing out a work visa in one country, and I was getting all the paperwork ready for the visit to KL. I had to make sure all my visa paperwork was concluded, and I literally got all the visa paperwork closed the day before I left for KL. So like the 2 days before I left for KL, I got literally like no sleep those nights because I was so busy trying to make sure all was in order, the mental gyration of that. And I will say, those 2 days, I was not particularly the most optimistic person. I was the person with folders, going to the immigration, going to my agency, making sure that everything was in order. And so I will say, like, it's kind of funny because I wrote this song and I released it in the middle of the time when life didn't maybe seem so peppy. But I think that's one reason I did it because I'm like, oftentimes when things are a bit difficult, I will literally go and do the exact opposite of what of what most people would do, which I'm not saying is positive or negative. I'm just saying that's me. So it's like when the milieu of visas and paperwork and MDAX were filling up my life, I was releasing my life's a cup more than half full, and I think that's kind of emblematic of how I tend to work. But this is the vlog on that song. It is again one of the few English songs, entirely English songs on the album. The other songs tend to be bilingual or instrumental on this album. So that's the vlog for this.